I'm Amaris Langley, 24, standing on the stage at Westfield University's commencement, my heart pounding like a drum as I gaze into the sea of faces below. My parents, Charles and Victoria Langley, sit in the front rows, their expressions frozen in a ghostly pallor as the truth of their favoritism unravels before thousands. This moment isn't just my triumph. It's a reckoning for the years I spent believing I was worthless next to my sister, Chloe, their golden child. My cap and gown feel like armor, the tassels swaying as I grip the podium, the weight of my journey pressing against my chest. But before I tell you about the shock that silenced this auditorium, let me take you back to the beginning of my story, a path carved through pain, defiance, and unexpected victories. I grew up in a picture-perfect colonial house in suburban Michigan, where maple trees lined the streets and neighbors waved from their porches. Our home, with its white picket fence and manicured lawn, screamed American dream, but inside it was a stage for a quieter tragedy. My father, Charles, an accountant with a penchant for order, and my mother, Victoria, a high school English teacher with a sharp tongue, poured their love into Chloe, my younger sister by 2 years. With her golden curls and effortless charm, Chloe was their pride, their future. I was the afterthought, the shadow trailing behind her light. My passion for art, the way I could lose myself in sketches of the lake behind our house, was dismissed. "A hobby, not a career," Dad would say, his eyes barely lifting from his newspaper. Mom was worse, her critiques stung like frostbite. "Art won't pay the bills, Amaris. Focus on something practical." The unfairness wasn't just in words. Christmases were a stark reminder. Chloe unwrapped designer clothes and gadgets while I got socks or clearance rack sketch pads. "Chloe needs encouragement for her talents," Mom would justify, her voice tight, as if my questioning was a betrayal. It was at 13, rummaging through dusty boxes in our basement, that I found Mom's old journal. Her looping handwriting confessed a jealousy of my childhood drawings, a talent she'd never had. That discovery twisted my pain into something sharper. Her dismissal wasn't just neglect, it was personal. I swallowed the hurt, channeling it into school, where I excelled, even winning a regional business plan competition at 16. But my parents barely noticed, too busy cheering Chloe's debate team victories. The final blow came senior year when Chloe and I both got into Westfield University, a prestigious school known for its business program. I'll never forget the dinner where I announced my acceptance, my hands trembling with hope. Dad glanced up from his phone. "Good for you," he muttered before turning to Chloe's identical news with hugs and champagne. Weeks later, they sat us down. "We've saved for college," Dad said, his eyes on Chloe. "Westfield's tuition is steep, but we'll cover yours entirely." My heart sank as I waited for my turn. When I asked, Mom's voice was cold. "There's only enough for one, Amaris. Chloe's the better investment." Later, I overheard them in their study, whispering about a secret savings fund meant for both of us, but they planned to use my share for a lake house after Chloe's graduation. That betrayal lit a fire in me. I'd prove them wrong, no matter the cost. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your country in the comments, we'd love to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do it right now so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just stories, they're deep life lessons, the kind you'll probably recognize from your own experiences. So stay with us, there's so much more to come. The air in our Michigan home always carried a subtle tension, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. By the time I was a teenager, I'd learned to navigate the unspoken rules. Stay quiet, don't outshine Chloe, and never expect Charles and Victoria Langley to see me as more than a shadow. Our colonial house, with its creaking hardwood floors and walls lined with Chloe's debate trophies, was a shrine to my sister's perfection. 15, I'd already accepted that my parents' love was a currency I'd never earn, but I hadn't yet grasped how deep their betrayal would cut. Chloe, 2 years younger, was a golden comet. Her laughter filled rooms, her report cards sparked dinner table celebrations. I watched her unwrap a new iPhone for her 13th birthday while I got a used sketchbook, its pages yellowed. "Chloe needs tools to succeed," Mom said, her voice clipped when I dared ask why. My art, my sanctuary, was a battlefield. I'd spend hours in my room sketching the Michigan Lake's restless waves, only for Dad to scoff, "That won't get you into college." The summer I turned 13, I found Mom's journal in the basement, hidden in a box of old tax files. Her words were a gut punch. "Amaris's talent makes me feel small. I can't look at her drawings without remembering what I gave up." Her envy, raw and unguarded, explained her coldness, but it didn't dull the pain. I shoved the journal back, my hands trembling, vowing to bury that secret deep. School was my escape. I joined every club, math team, student council, business society, determined to carve a place where I mattered. My sophomore year, I poured my heart into a business plan for a local bakery, winning a regional competition. Trophy gleamed on my desk, but at home it was invisible. "Did you see Chloe's science fair project?" Mom asked, her eyes on her phone. I swallowed the hurt, channeling it into a 4.0 GPA. My economics teacher, Mr. Caldwell, saw my drive and pushed me to aim for Westfield University, a dream I held close. But every step forward felt like running through quicksand, with Chloe's effortless victories stealing the spotlight. The real fracture came my junior year. I got a job at Brewed Awakening, a cozy coffee shop downtown, to save for college, sensing my parents wouldn't help. The work was grueling, 6 a.m. shifts, scalding espresso burns, but it was mine. One night, a coworker, jealous of my tips, accused me of stealing from the register. The manager nearly fired me until my grandmother, Margaret, drove 2 hours to plead my case, her voice fierce. "My granddaughter is no thief." Her belief in me was a lifeline, her words echoing as I scrubbed tables. "You're a diamond, Amaris, forged under pressure." That incident hardened my resolve, but it also deepened my isolation. Why did I have to fight for everything? Senior year brought the ultimate betrayal. Chloe and I both applied to Westfield, and when our acceptances arrived, I thought naively that my hard work would finally matter. Dinner, I shared my news, my voice shaking with pride. Dad's "good job" was a reflex, drowned out by Chloe's announcement minutes later, which sparked hugs and toasts. Weeks later, they sat us down. "We've saved for Chloe's tuition," Dad said, his eyes avoiding mine. "She's our priority." When I pressed, Mom's words were a blade. "You're a burden, Amaris." That night, I overheard them in Dad's study, their whispers searing into my memory. Amaris's share of the college fund can go toward the lake house after Chloe graduates. The realization that they'd planned this, hoarding a fund meant for both of us, shattered something in me. I cried into my pillow, but by dawn, my tears had dried into defiance. I'd get to Westfield, pay my own way, and show them I was no burden, I was unstoppable. Westfield University was a sprawling campus of red brick buildings and oak-lined paths, an hour from my Michigan hometown, but it felt like another planet. At 18, I arrived with a beat-up suitcase, a heart full of defiance, and a plan to prove my parents wrong. Charles and Victoria Langley had written me off, but I'd make it through Westfield without their help. I pieced together my tuition with scholarships, federal loans, and 3 part-time jobs: barista at Brewed Awakening, cashier at a dusty bookstore, and office assistant for the business department. My days were a blur of coffee steam, textbook pages, and spreadsheets, but I refused to break. The grind was brutal. I'd wake at 5 a.m., study in my cramped off-campus apartment, then bike to the coffee shop for opening shifts. One freezing November night, disaster struck. Coworker Lisa, who resented my tips, accused me of stealing $50 from the register. The manager, a gruff man named Tom, called me in, his eyes hard. "I can't have thieves here, Amaris." My stomach dropped. Losing this job would unravel my budget. I pleaded my case, but he was unmoved until my grandmother, Margaret, showed up unannounced. She'd driven 2 hours through sleet, her silver hair damp, her voice fierce. "My granddaughter is honest to a fault. Check your cameras." Tom did, and the footage cleared me. Lisa had pocketed the cash. Margaret's parting words, whispered as she hugged me, kept me going. "You're a diamond, Amaris, forged under pressure." That night, I cried not from relief, but from the weight of needing someone to fight for me. Westfield, I found my stride in business classes, where concepts like marketing and finance clicked in ways art never had publicly. My professors noticed my knack for strategy, but balancing 30 hours of work with a full course load left me exhausted. Enter Nora Bennett, my roommate, a lanky sophomore with a quick laugh and a story that mirrored mine. One late night, over microwaved ramen, Nora opened up about being disowned by her family for being transgender. "They said I was a mistake," she admitted, her voice steady but eyes glistening. I shared my own wounds, my parents' favoritism, mom's journal confessing her jealousy. That night, we became sisters, not by blood but by survival. Nora's support was tangible. She cooked extra meals when I skipped dinner to save cash, proofread my essays when my vision blurred from fatigue, and once chased off a landlord threatening eviction over a late rent check. My advisors, Professor Evelyn Harper and Dean Clara Bennett, became my anchors. Evelyn, with her sharp wit and office overflowing with books, saw potential in my class presentations. "You think like an entrepreneur, Amaris," she said, pushing me to dream bigger. Clara, the dean, helped me navigate financial aid when Brood Awakening slashed my hours during a slow season. That winter, I nearly lost my apartment, my bank account dipping to $12. I sat in Clara's office, fighting tears, expecting pity. Instead, she handed me an emergency grant application and said, "You're tougher than this setback." Her faith, like Margaret's and Nora's, was a lifeline. Inspired, I started a digital marketing side hustle, offering social media services to local businesses. Began small, a bakery, a florist, but grew into a fledgling company, giving me a taste of independence. The challenges didn't stop. Sleepless nights, skipped meals, and the constant fear of falling behind haunted me. Yet every late-night study session, every client email built something unbreakable in me. Nora's laughter, Evelyn's mentorship, and Margaret's fierce belief were my armor against the world. I wasn't just surviving Westfield, I was rewriting my story, one determined step at a time, unaware that the hardest tests and greatest triumphs were still to come. Junior year at Westfield was a pressure cooker, my days a relentless cycle of classes, client emails for my marketing business, and late-night shifts at the bookstore. I'd built a fragile stability, but my heart still carried scars from my parents' dismissal. Chloe, my sister, existed on the periphery of my life, a sorority girl with a dazzling smile, gliding through college on Charles and Victoria's dime. I envied her ease, but mostly I resented her silence during the years I'd been deemed a burden. So, when she showed up at my apartment door one rainy October night, her eyes red and swollen, I froze, my hand gripping the knob. "Amaris, I need your help," Chloe choked out, clutching a laptop and a mess of papers. She confessed she was failing her senior thesis seminar, her political science research deemed fundamentally flawed by her professor. Without a passing grade, she wouldn't graduate. My first instinct was to shut the door. Why should I save the golden child who'd never fought for me? Her perfect life, funded by the college savings my parents withheld from me, flashed through my mind. But her trembling hands and desperate gaze stirred something softer, a flicker of the sister I'd once idolized before our parents' favoritism drove a wedge between us. "Come in," I said, my voice wary, and cleared space on my cluttered kitchen table. Those study sessions changed everything. I guided Chloe through research methods, drawing on skills honed from my business projects with Professor Harper. As we pored over her notes, Chloe's questions shifted from citations to my life. "How do you do it?" she asked one night, her voice low. "Classes, 3 jobs, your company?" I shrugged, reluctant to expose my vulnerability, but her earnestness cracked my defenses. I told her about my 60-hour workweeks, the nights I skipped meals to pay rent, the fear of failing Westfield's expectations. Her eyes widened, guilt etching her face. The next week, she showed up with a bombshell, an old email she'd found in Dad's account, sent to my high school counselor, asking them to downplay my achievements to keep family harmony. "They didn't want me to outshine you," I said, my voice trembling with old hurt. Chloe's face crumpled. I didn't know, Amaris. I'm so sorry. That revelation was a turning point. Chloe began rejecting our parents' lavish gifts, a new car, designer bags, saying she wanted to stand on her own like you. I watched her grapple with the privilege she'd taken for granted, her sorority polish giving way to a rawer, humbler version of herself. Our late-night talks, fueled by cheap coffee and shared regrets, rebuilt a bridge I thought was burned. She told me about the pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing mom and dad. I shared the ache of mom's journal, her envy of my art, a secret I'd carried alone. One night, Chloe admitted she'd confronted our parents about the email, demanding why they'd sabotaged me. Their excuses, we thought it was best, only deepened her resolve to stand by me. For the first time, I saw not a rival but a sister, both of us shaped by our parents' flawed choices. Our bond wasn't perfect, years of distance couldn't vanish overnight, but it was real. Chloe's thesis improved, and I felt a quiet pride not just in her but in us. As graduation loomed, I sensed a bigger storm brewing, one that would test our newfound alliance and expose truths our parents couldn't hide. Senior year at Westfield University was a whirlwind, my life a tightrope walk between triumph and terror. My digital marketing company, born from late-night hustle, had grown into a small but thriving operation, employing 4 fellow students and earning a glowing feature in the Michigan Business Journal. Pinnacle came in April when I stood on a Chicago stage, clutching a $50,000 check as the winner of the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition. My pitch, a platform connecting rural small businesses with digital tools, wowed the judges, and Alexander Global Consulting, a top-tier firm, offered me a job with a $90,000 starting salary. For the first time, I felt the weight of my parents' dismissal, Charles and Victoria calling me a burden, slipping away. I wasn't just surviving, I was soaring. But success came with shadows. As graduation neared, a sense of unease crept in like static before a storm. 2 weeks before the ceremony, my phone buzzed at 2 a.m. with an anonymous text. "Don't give your speech. They plan to humiliate you." The words chilled me, my heart racing as I sat up in my cramped apartment, the glow of my laptop casting eerie shadows. Who were they? My first thought was my parents, desperate to preserve their image of a perfect family, with Chloe as their star and me as the invisible daughter. Or was it someone else, maybe a jealous classmate or even Lisa, the coworker who'd once framed me at the coffee shop? I had no proof, only paranoia gnawing at my resolve. I stared at the message until dawn, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. A public shaming, a sabotage speech, or worse, a lie about my achievements. I confided in Nora, my roommate and chosen sister, over breakfast at our chipped kitchen table. Her eyes narrowed as she read the text. "This smells like cowardice," she said, her voice fierce. "Someone's scared of your story, Amaris. You've earned that stage." Her words, grounded in her own fight against rejection, steadied me, but doubt lingered. Later, I visited Professor Evelyn Harper in her cluttered office, books stacked like fortresses. I showed her the message, my hands trembling. "I think it's my parents," I admitted, the fear spilling out. "They've always wanted me quiet." Evelyn leaned back, her gaze sharp but kind. "You've built a legacy here, Amaris, valedictorian, entrepreneur, survivor. No one can take that away. Tell your truth and let the cowards squirm." Their encouragement was a lifeline, but the threat haunted me. I spent nights rehearsing my commencement speech, a reflection on resilience forged in adversity, careful not to name my parents but honest about the pain of being underestimated. Each word felt like a weapon, a way to reclaim my narrative. I tightened security on my company's website, fearing sabotage, and double-checked my academic records, paranoid about tampering. Campus, with its blooming spring oaks and students snapping pre-graduation photos, felt both vibrant and menacing, as if eyes were watching my every move. As the ceremony loomed, I clung to my anchors, Nora's unwavering loyalty, Evelyn's mentorship, and the memory of my grandmother Margaret's fierce belief in me. The anonymous threat was a test, one more hurdle in a life full of them. I decided to step onto that stage, not just for me, but for every kid told they weren't enough. Whatever they had planned, I'd face it head-on, my truth louder than their lies. Graduation day at Westfield University dawned crisp and clear, the Michigan sky a brilliant blue as families swarmed the campus, snapping photos under blooming oaks. I stood in the student assembly area, my black gown rustling, the special stole from my grandmother Margaret draped over my shoulders. Its embroidered words, "Diamonds are forged under pressure," felt like a shield against the anonymous threat that had haunted me for weeks. "Don't give your speech. They plan to humiliate you." My heart raced, but I pushed the fear down, determined to claim this moment. As I adjusted my cap, the auditorium's roar beckoned, a cavernous space packed with thousands, including my parents, Charles and Victoria Langley, whose dismissal had fueled my fire. Filing into the auditorium to pomp and circumstance, I spotted Chloe, my sister, a few rows ahead, her golden hair catching the light. Our parents sat in premium seats, Dad in his navy suit, Mom in a floral dress and wide-brimmed hat, their eyes tracking Chloe with pride. Margaret sat beside them, her simple blue dress a quiet contrast, her gaze locked on me with fierce love. When my name was called as valedictorian, I crossed the stage, Margaret's whistle piercing the polite applause. Chloe flashed me a thumbs up, our newfound bond a quiet strength. Then came the moment I'd both dreaded and craved, my speech. Standing at the podium, I drew a shaky breath, the anonymous threat echoing in my mind. But as I spoke, my voice steadied, weaving a story of resilience, mine, forged in the crucible of being underestimated. 4 years ago, I arrived at Westfield with nothing but determination, I said, avoiding my parents' names but bearing the truth of overcoming doubt. The audience leaned in, their applause at the end a warm wave. I stepped aside, my pulse still racing, unaware of the bombshell about to drop. President Theodore Walsh took the podium, his voice resonant. "Before we conclude, we honor an extraordinary graduate." He announced the Amaris Langley Resilience Scholarship, a fund in my name for students overcoming obstacles. Then, his tone shifted, revealing I'd self-funded my education, built a thriving business, and graduated with a perfect GPA without family support. A murmur rippled through the crowd. But he wasn't done. "Thanks to a courageous submission," he said, "we have evidence of the challenges Amaris faced." A recording crackled through the speakers, my parents' voices captured by Chloe, admitting they'd withheld my college fund to prioritize Chloe and fund a lake house. Gasps filled the auditorium. I froze, my eyes darting to Charles and Victoria, their faces drained of color, mouths agape as their private betrayal became public. The room seemed to tilt, a mix of vindication and pain surging through me. Chloe stood among the graduates, clapping fiercely, tears streaming down her face. "My sister is the strongest person I know," she shouted, her voice breaking. "Mom and Dad, you were wrong about her." Margaret remained seated, her arthritic knees betraying her, but her eyes blazed as she turned to my parents. "You abandoned the jewel of this family," she said, her words cutting through the stunned silence. Later, I learned a journalist, an old friend of Margaret's from the Detroit Free Press, was in the audience. Her scathing article, published the next day, exposed my parents' favoritism, shredding their social standing in Michigan's tight-knit circles. As the ceremony ended, graduates spilled into the sunlight, but I lingered, the weight of the moment sinking in. My parents stood awkwardly, their usual confidence shattered. Chloe grabbed my hand, her grip fierce, and Margaret's proud nod anchored me. The recording, Chloe's betrayal of our parents to defend me, had shifted our family's foundation. I'd claimed my truth, not just for me, but for every kid deemed unworthy. The battle wasn't over, but on that stage, I'd won. The days after Westfield's graduation were a strange mix of euphoria and ache. The auditorium's stunned silence, the crackle of my parents' recorded betrayal, and Chloe's tearful defense lingered like echoes. I'd stood tall, my truth laid bare, but the victory was bittersweet. Charles and Victoria Langley, their social standing tarnished by a Detroit Free Press expose, approached me outside the ceremony, their faces strained. "Join us for a family dinner," Mom said, her voice unnaturally soft. "We'll help with your rent, a graduation gift." The offer, draped in guilt, felt like charity. I squared my shoulders, the weight of my $90,000 job offer from Alexander Global Consulting grounding me. "My salary covers my life," I said, my voice steady. "I don't need your pity." Their silence as I walked away, Nora's arm linked with mine, was louder than any apology they could muster. Back in my apartment, I unpacked my stole from grandmother Margaret, its embroidered words, "Diamonds are forged under pressure," a reminder of her fierce belief in me. Tucked inside its folds was a letter, written in Dad's careful script, dated before Margaret's passing last year. "Amaris," it began, "I failed you, letting Victoria's fears overshadow your light. I'm sorry." His words, raw with regret, admitted he'd been too weak to challenge Mom's manipulation. Tears blurred my vision, not just for his apology, but for the years we'd lost. The letter didn't erase the pain, but it cracked open a door to partial forgiveness, a fragile bridge I wasn't ready to cross fully. I folded it away, knowing healing would take time. Using my $50,000 prize from the national business competition, I established a scholarship at Westfield for students facing financial hardship, a legacy to honor my journey and Margaret's faith. Slowly, I began rebuilding with my parents, meeting them for cautious coffees at a lakeside cafe in our Michigan hometown. Their apologies, halting but genuine, hinted at remorse, though trust remained a work in progress. Chloe, now my fiercest ally, transformed before my eyes. Inspired by my story, she turned down a cushy corporate job to work for a nonprofit advocating for equitable education, her privilege reshaped into purpose. One golden August afternoon, Chloe and I walked along Lake Michigan's shore, the water glinting like my childhood sketches. She handed me a small, creased paper, her hands nervous. It was a drawing I'd made at 8, a vibrant sunset over the lake, colors bold and unapologetic. "Mom wanted to throw it out," Chloe said softly. "I hid it because you were always an artist to me." My throat tightened as I traced the crayon lines, a piece of my younger self preserved by the sister I'd once resented. "Thank you," I whispered, hugging her. That moment cemented our bond, a sisterhood forged not in competition, but in mutual redemption. Looking back, I see my worth was never tied to my parents' approval. Nora, who cooked me meals when I was broke, Chloe, who chose truth over loyalty to our parents, and Margaret, whose love was my anchor, they were my real family, the ones who saw me when I felt invisible. From the ashes of neglect, I built a life of strength, proving that adversity doesn't break you, it shapes you into something unbreakable. To anyone listening, let my story leave you with 3 lessons. First, truth is your greatest weapon. My mother's journal and Chloe's recording exposed painful realities, but facing them gave me justice and healing. Second, your chosen family defines you. Nora, Chloe, and Margaret saw my value when my parents didn't, reminding me that love is earned through loyalty, not blood. Finally, adversity forges diamonds. From false accusations at the coffee shop to anonymous threats, every challenge honed my resilience, teaching me to shine beyond others' limits. If my journey of secrets, betrayal, and triumph has touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of resilience. Drop your own story in the comments. How have you overcome being underestimated? This tale moved me, and I hope it sparks strength in you. Let's keep inspiring each other.